It's late March right now, and for many of us, we're starting to think about portable operations while camping or weekend POTA activations. Radioddity just sent me their latest portable multiband high-frequency or HF antenna, and that's making me even more ready to hit the campgrounds. The HF10 is very similar to the earlier HF009 portable antenna. However, it has several differences, both in what's included as well as some physical differences. First, there's a separate antenna mount which will fit the ground spike, tripod screw, or the optional mag mount adapter. Next, there's a separate loading coil for 80 meters. There's the tripod I mentioned earlier and a vinyl water bag to weigh down the tripod. Last, there's individual wire spools for the coax and each of the ground wires. Oh, and a 10-foot tape measure marked in both inches and millimeters. What's the same are the extension poles, adjustable coil for 17 through 60 meters, the ground spike, radials or ground wires, and an SO239 to male BNC adapter. Let's change camera views and take a look at what you'll get. Here's the case that the HF010 antenna comes in. It comes with a nice carrying strap and a nice case. I like cases to protect my equipment, so this is really good. So let's open it up and see what we find inside. We'll look at the top part here first. It's behind a net and it's all zipped up. So we start with a 10-foot tape measure that we've got right here. We've got these wire winders for the radials, and these radials are each about 16 feet long. They've got 3 millimeter banana plugs that fit in the base of the antenna. We'll show you that here in a minute. There are 3 of those. This case down here is an inflatable bag, and basically it's a donut, similar to what you might find on an airplane when someone's supporting their neck. But basically you fill it with up to 3 liters of water, put it over the legs of the tripod so that there's weight there and it's less likely that the wind is going to blow it over. Here is the primary coax, and again, it's coming in a really nice winder. And so you can unlock it here with this orange switch, fold up the handle, and you can reel it in very easily that way. So this is really pretty handy. And this has got the PL259 plugs on both ends of the coax. And then there's a little adapter here that comes with the kit, and it has the SO239 on this side right here. And then it's got a BNC on this side. So if you're using a BNC cable, you can make that connection. Now there's one more accessory that Radioddity sent me with this. This is purchased separately, but unlike me with my F-150 that's not magnetic, if you have one of those big mag mounts that you can put on the top or the back deck of your car and do a little parking lot POTA, for example, this adapter would fit. It would fit there on the mount at the mag mount end, and then the antenna would fit here with this 3/4 by 24 plug on the top. So you wouldn't use either the spike or the tripod. You could use your mag mount. Again, this one is sold separately. Now, the other parts that we have in here are a couple of extension rods. And so we can see those are here. And they come undone with Velcro snaps on one end and elastic on the other. And Radioddity mentions that these are 3/4 by 24s, and they're made out of stainless steel here instead of aluminum. And so these should be pretty durable. We can slide that back underneath here and put the strap back over the top here. And this one is the adjustable coil. Instead of moving a slider here with your thumb on the coil itself, the coil's a little longer and it's thinner, but then you can make the movements and the adjustments here using this lever up here. And these are all marked for you from 0 at this end all the way down to 8 at this end with intermediate markings. So as you work on tuning up the various frequencies that you like to use, You can make notes to set this up promptly when you go after it. This one is from 5 to 18 megahertz. Here's a second extension rod, and then here we've got another coil. So we'll unwrap that. And this coil is for 80 meters. So it says it's 3.5 megahertz. And then, so this would go into the assembly instead of this longer one here if you're going to be working on 80 meters. I don't usually work on 80 meters. I've seen some reviews that said this can be a little fiddly, but it's there, and that's interesting for those of you who care for 80 meters. And then over here, we have the connector. Now, this goes on top of either the ground stake or on top of the tripod. It screws in here. It's got an SO239, and then your extension rods start to screw on top here. This is the ground stake. It's got a nice big plastic cover so you're not jabbing yourself or other things. Here you can screw this in. Now you can screw the antenna, that little connector that I just showed you here, or you can screw this into the bottom of the tripod, so you can both bury this into the ground and then place the tripod on top of it and connect the two together to give it some good stability if you're working in a breezy environment. And then there's got this little lock nut here that the instructions talk about that's connected right there. And then also in this particular little strapping is the antenna. And so the antenna's got a nice kind of a heavy knurled bottom here made out of plastic. You can see the antenna here has got the screws in there. And this comes in at just under 17 feet. So this is a pretty large extension whip that comes with the antenna. So that's pretty much everything that we've got in it. I'm going to move this case aside, and we're going to take a minute to look at the owner's manual. So here's the owner's manual that comes with the HF10, and it's really pretty good. It gives you the usual warnings and cautions here at the beginning, and then it gives you photos and pictures of all the pieces, parts, an overview of how you set this up in a general way. And then it gives you some specifics about each of the bands. And that comes in the form of this really interesting little chart here. And I'll lay that in a larger version up on the screen now while we're talking. But you can see it's got the bands across the top and then the parts going up and down on the left-hand side. And so it tells all of these bands, 6, 10, 11, 12, 15, 17, 20, 40, 60, and 80, all require the extension rods. The adjustable loading coil is only used on 60, 40, 20, and 17. The fixed loading cable, which is at 3.5 inductance coil, is only used for 80. And then the telescopic whip is used for everything. And then the ground radials are used for everything except 80, which is kind of interesting. Here is the chart for the coil scale and the ground wires. So at 6 meters, the telescopic whip is out 40 centimeters. The coil is not included in that assembly, and the 100 centimeters is out on those ground wires that I showed you. If we go down here, you can see that the loading coil, the adjustable one, is here at 3.7 on the scale for 40 meters and 5.4 on the scale for 60 meters. And then at 17 and 20, it's on the number 1 on that scale, and that's where you're going to start. 17 and 20 have 300 centimeter radials, and then the 40 and 60 are extended to their full length. And when we put this together, you'll see that the little wire winders that the radials are attached to have little marks on them at 1 meter and 2 meter. And so this 300 centimeter will go out to that first mark. And then down here, the 80 says there's no radials used. And so that's the owner's manual. Now, let's take the antenna outside and set it up. My plan is to connect a small 200 milliwatt whisper transmitter on both the 20 and 40 meter bands and see what kind of receive pattern we'll end up with. My location isn't the best as my home is set against a rocky hill that's above the house to the north and the east. So I am in my backyard here. I'm just going to set this up here real quick, and I'm going to be setting it for 20 meters. And so we're going to take the connector and just screw it onto the tripod, which comes in the kit. And next are going to be those 2 extension poles. So I've got those out of the kit, and they're going to just screw in here into the top. Got that one. Next, we're going to put on the sliding scale, and that goes like this with the coil up. And I've got it set to 1, which is what the manual calls for it to be. Next is going to be the expanding whip antenna. Okay, so now I have the antenna set up. I played around with it. You can see my little antenna analyzer down there and the short cable. And I've got it all set up here. And I got it down to about 1.3 to 1 here in the backyard. And so at this point, I'm just going to let it set for a little bit and come back out a little bit later this afternoon and start my whisper transmitters going on 20 meters. Before we move on to the whisper results, please subscribe to the Gadget Talk channel if you haven't already, and hit the thumbs up button below the video. It's easy and it's free. You can also support the channel more directly by becoming a channel member or clicking the thanks button. I really appreciate it. I let the whisper transmitter go for about 6 hours during the late afternoon and early evening on 2 consecutive days. Here are a couple of screenshots from PSK Reporter showing who picked up my signal. Again, keep in mind these were 200 milliwatt transmissions. Here's the 20-meter result. And here's the 40-meter result from the following day at the same time period. Next, let's take a look at the SWR results from my Nano VNA H4. I did calibrations for each band and saved them to the Nano VNA's calibration memories to easily switch between bands. Using the settings found in the HF10's user manual turned out to be a sort of a mixed bag. Some were spot on and others needed some adjustments. Remember, when tuning an antenna, to raise the resonant frequency, you'll need to shorten the antenna, and vice versa. In my test, shortening the antenna was the primary adjustment I needed to make. Here's a screenshot of the recommended settings on 10 meters. It needed some shortening. This shot showed a very respectable curve after my adjustments. On 15 meters, the recommended settings produced a very nice SWR curve. Here's that screenshot. Both 10 meters and 15 meters don't use either coil, just the whip antenna on the extension poles. The adjustable coil is used on 17, 20, and 40 meters. Here's the SWR curve for the recommended 17-meter settings. Not bad, but not good either. With a little adjusting, I got low SWR readings across the band. The recommended settings for 20 meters produce this curve. Not too bad, but by shortening the antenna, I was able to get this very nice result. At 40 meters, I began to see a deeper dip representing a narrower SWR curve. The recommended settings were good. You'll need to adjust the antenna length to move the curve up or down the band, though. At the dip, it was about 1.1 to 1. As with several other reviewers here on YouTube, I found that 80 meters was not at all good using the recommended settings. As seen here, the SWR was off the chart up at about 14 to 1 with the dip occurring above the ham bands. With some fiddling, I was able to tune the very steep dip down to about 1.1 to 1 at the top end of the band. Small adjustments resulted in dramatic increases to the SWR readings. All in all, I found the HF10 to be a nice antenna for portable use. Coming in at about 6 pounds, it's not too heavy, although if you were planning on hiking to a remote spot, a wire dipole or end-fed half-wave antenna would probably be a better choice. However, for campsite POTA, picnic table portable, or tailgate operations, the HF10 would be a good choice. The optional mag-mount adapter will give you even more flexibility, assuming your vehicle doesn't have a plastic or aluminum top like my F-150. All that assumes you don't need the full 80-meter band. If your target is 80 meters, you'd probably be happier with a dedicated 80-meter dipole or multiband end-fed half-wave. Vertical antennas with a tuning coil on 80 meters seem to be antennas that have a pretty high Q factor. I started this video listing some differences between the HF10 and the HF009. While the main difference is the 80-meter coil, which, as we've seen, has some limitations, the separate antenna mount, tripod base, the ground spike base, wire winders, and the optional mag mount adapter is, in my opinion, worth the extra cost. Do you need to consider upgrading to the HF10 if you already have the HF009? Probably not. If you're happy with the HF009 results, don't mess with a good thing. On the other hand, if you don't have either one and are trying to decide between the two, I'd go with the HF10. To me, the extra flexibility is worth it. Join me over here for another video I think you'll like. I've got affiliate links below if you're interested in adding the HF10 to your portable operations kit. And don't forget to subscribe and give a big thumbs up. Thanks for watching, N73.